From CBS News Bay Area, this is the Evening Edition.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Andrea Nakano. We begin tonight with protests across the country. Hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets today to tell the White House hands off, demonstrating against a number of policies recently put into place by the Trump administration and Elon Musk. Drastic cuts to the federal workforce and slashing federal funding across several government programs were top of the agenda. There was also opposition on other issues such as immigration and tariffs. Well, hands-off protests also happened here in the Bay Area. Oakland seniors rallied together earlier over their fears of the future of Social Security, as did veterans at the Civic Center in San Francisco. Our John Ramos spoke to one who's concerned his Social Security checks may soon stop coming.
If people were waiting for an organized pushback against the Trump administration's agenda, it came today. But it didn't come from lawmakers. It came from the people themselves. People gathered in San Francisco to speak out against Donald Trump's executive actions in a scene reminiscent of the massive protests during the Vietnam War.
I feel as intense as I did when I was 20.
Jim Sanderson remembers what it was like in 1970 when Americans lost their belief in not just a war, but the nation itself.
That was a it was tearing us apart, and the war and all that. I feel like that again, but now the enemy's from within.
Thousands of people filled the street and plaza in front of City Hall, their faces reflecting a full range of life experiences and concerns.
Thank you for reminding us that sometimes the only way to be heard is to disrupt the status quo.
In the front row was May Alice from the East Bay. She, like a lot of people, is concerned about the possibility of cuts to Social Security. But she thinks it's less likely to happen if people turn out in numbers like this.
There isn't anybody that doesn't have a mom or a dad or a grandma or grandpa on Social Security. I don't think it's actually going to be actualized. I don't, because there's 70 million people that will hit the streets and throw this guy into a dumpster, you know?
The so-called hands-off rallies were organized by a national group called Indivisible. They released this map showing the depth of the event nationwide. Susan Austin with the Mid-Peninsula chapter said the hope is to make an impression on Republican lawmakers in conservative states.
What we're going to see today is people in Alabama, in Pennsylvania, in all these red and swing states that are showing up, and their legislators are going to have to take their constituents' points of view into mind, and more people are saying this wasn't the Trump that I voted for. These aren't the actions that I was thinking I was getting with Trump.
As he watched from across the street, Jim said he felt a sense of relief, especially after there was so little resistance coming from elected officials in the first few weeks.
And for a minute I thought I was the only one that smelled smoke in the house and there was a fire. It wasn't until people started pushing back and the artists started saying, a lot of people don't agree with this. That's when I felt, oh good, now I got to find something to do.
He's doing what any private citizen can, show up and make their voices heard. And they're hoping that the sheer numbers will mean elected officials who have stayed silent will have something else to fear besides Donald Trump come Election Day.
And it has been a brutal week for stocks as investors sour on Trump's tariff strategy. Big drops across the market as stocks saw their worst week since the start of the pandemic. And it's now just big business, not just big business, feeling the pain. Here in the Bay Area, companies exposed to new import and export tariffs are wondering how they will survive. Ardalan explains the markup on things like soy sauce from Oakland's Chinatown.
Many products in this Chinese market are imported from Asia. Importers say the prices will soon go up dramatically. It's not just here. Eating out will also be more expensive. Walk into any Bay Area Asian market. You'll likely find products imported by Taylor Chow.
Soy sauce, Soy sauce, yeah, mostly soy sauce, and then rice steak noodle.
Taylor imports food products from China, Hong Kong, Vietnam, Taiwan, and other parts of Asia. He then sells these products to Asian markets and restaurants.
This is rice steak is coming from China. Before the 2018, it's selling under $1.
Now?
Now, $2.39.
And he expects the rice steak noodles to soon go up to $3. President Donald Trump will add a 34% tariff on Chinese products this month, on top of the 20% recently imposed. That's a total of 54% import tax on Chinese goods.
Our margin very slim. We have to pass down to the consumer. So consumer, pretty soon, they will see the increase.
Products from Vietnam will face a 46% tariff, while items from Taiwan will be hit with a 32% import tax.
Consumer will definitely buy less. That means our business will shrinking.
Many markets expect to raise prices by the end of the month once they've gone through their existing inventory. Business owners warn some smaller markets may be forced to shut down if customers buy less.
They will say, wow, how come you sell too expensive? I said, well, what can we do? When we bring in price increase, we have to increase.
Many seniors on fixed income say they'll be the hardest hit.
I used to shop maybe two, 3 times. Now just one time. Of course, you have to cut down. Your salary doesn't increase, but your grocery increase 50%. That's unsustainable.
For both consumers and importers, Taylor expects some tough days ahead.
I feel sad and I feel helpless.
Let's say you need a bottle of soy sauce. Taylor says it may be wise to buy now than to wait, because 2 weeks from now, the price will likely be a lot higher than $2.99.
Thank you, Don. Governor Newsom has already taken steps to try and shield Californians from the impact of tariffs, saying he will call on foreign governments to exclude items made in the state from any retaliatory actions. California's economy relies on frequent trade with countries like China, Mexico, and Canada. Well, coming up, the Giants are off to a hot start to begin the season, but are they investing more off the field than on it? We'll explain.
And coming up in the First Alert forecast, you no doubt want to take advantage of this weekend. Temperatures in the mid-70s. And just know if your plans take you to the beach, there is a beach hazard statement and there is a pretty decent little swell coming our way. Concerned with this one along our coast? Going to be sneaker waves, primarily tomorrow. We're going to talk to you about that. And then we'll talk about a small chance of rain. So, a few things to discuss coming up after the break. Did you have a chance to be outside at all in the Bay Area today? It was quite a nice one. Well, that's it right now, actually. That's our view, our live look, our front row view as we go through this Saturday evening on a day where temperatures were in the mid-70s. Look what happens if we color code this map. A lot more yellow and orange on here now. We're getting into that time of year where the whole color palette's changing. This had been like light blues and deep greens for most of the winter. So we're warming up quite nicely here. This is about 5 degrees above average. This was Saturday, the first day of your weekend. Watch what happens when I replace those daytime highs, put some more numbers on here, and get everybody's number on for tomorrow. Nothing changed. These are Sunday's numbers, and you're still pretty much doing the same thing. It's like mid to upper 70, well, mid-70s if you're in the South Bay, maybe a few mid-60s. So all the while we are doing that, there's one other thing to be aware of. And if we look at this map in a different way, and of course we looked at this a moment ago, I'm going to spotlight it again. If this forecast makes you think it's a really nice time to go to the beach, and why wouldn't it be? There's one minor hiccup. That is a beach hazard statement. It's going to stay in effect through tomorrow night. We looked at this a moment ago. Look at all the wave energy coming our way. 2 ways to look at this. There's a somewhat elevated swell. You see the wave energy comes our way. So the waves get a little bigger, but that's not really the primary concern here. Watch what happens if we visualize it differently. And if we look at the wave period, in other words, how much time elapses between the actual swells. The longer the time, the deeper the shades of fuchsia. Watch what happens. It's almost going to look like a front coming through. But there's going to be a period where you get this long wave period that shows up tomorrow afternoon. That's a concern right there, because as that passes, that's how you get sneaker waves. And that's the situation where the waves aren't super big. The swell's not really impressive, and you think, what's the big deal? And then after you're standing there for like, say, 6 minutes, all of a sudden, seemingly out of nowhere, a wave comes way up the beach and races much farther up and can grab things, pets, people, and pull it out with it. That's what a sneaker wave is. So that's the concern with that. For Sunday, same time, we're having all this wonderful weather that's going to make people want to go to the beach. So just make sure you're aware, or if you know somebody who has this idea, tell them, make sure they know to be on guard for sneaker waves tomorrow. All right, let's change our perspective now a little bit. And if we take a look at the west coast of the United States and the satellite imagery, we've got nothing but blue sky going on here today. It looks really nice. But right off of the coast, nope, what you can see out there is this pretty impressive cold front that's developed out there. And the clouds are already starting to look fairly well put together. Right there, this is us today. So we've got our clear, beautiful blue skies. That is the leading edge of the next cold front coming our way. Let's put some rain in that. So we'll visualize that on the Futurecast, and you'll see this line of showers within that is coming our way, and it's going to give us some light rain tomorrow night. It's not a lot, but they're right there. Let's get a closer look at that now. Let's bring that down to scale because there is a little bit of rain in that does need to be tracked. So we'll come back now to our virtual set, and we'll take a look at the view out here. I'm going to skip this ahead now, and we're taking a look ahead towards tomorrow night. So watch the timestamp down there. This is like 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 11. Now we're getting towards midnight, and that's when we see this come through. This is so late tomorrow night. It's actually technically more Monday morning, and there wasn't a lot to that. We probably only get about 1/10 of an inch of rain out of that. And the only thing it really does, besides give us about 1/10 of an inch of rain, is it cools down the numbers. So when you look at the 7-day forecast, we're going from our mid-70s tomorrow, we got to go down to the upper 60s on Monday, but the rain's done, whatever we get, by like 9 in the morning. And then we just warm right back up again. Some of these warmer inland spots will be near 80 by the time we get towards the middle of next week. And just to leave this discussion, showing you the other microclimate for the Bay, those temperatures also warm up a bit by the middle of next week. All right, Andrea, back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Darren. It's early, but at 6-1 this season, Giants fans are starting to feel pretty good. Major on-field investments like shortstop Willie Adames already paying off, hitting a walk-off winner yesterday in the home opener. But as our Kenny Choi reports, the investments outside the stadium could soon generate their own buzz.
Longtime radio broadcaster Marty Lurie and his fellow Giants fans are celebrating at Original Joe's in North Beach for what they're hoping will be a magical season.
Now we have a few wins in there already, but where it's going to go, who knows?
The sights and buzz of opening day abound. China Basin Park, a project 15 years in the making, opened less than a year ago as the Mission Rock neighborhood continues to evolve.
All that is still being developed, and that is really the nexus of what goes on at the park.
The Giants have invested in the development and expansion of the waterfront area just south of the park. Other professional franchises have reaped the benefits of vibrant villages and economic activity around their stadiums. Nola Aga is a sports economics consultant and professor of sports management at the University of San Francisco.
The Red Sox are a great example. Lansdowne Street next to the stadium, owning or at least renting, managing that property, and being able to capture more spending outside of the stadium.
Just across McCovey Cove, 2 high-rise residential and commercial buildings have opened with Visa moving in, but still plenty of retail space and units available. Aga points to other successful developments like LA Live near Crypto Arena.
There are high luxury condominiums, and people who live in those condos are season ticket holders, and they frequent those restaurants. And so it's this deeper capture of spending.
But fans may wonder if their team can be impacted when other investments are made. The breakdown of finances can be complex, but franchises in most cases will separate those entities according to Aga.
It's more profitable for the ownership group as a whole, but usually the team itself is isolated from those other transactions.
That separation doesn't necessarily mean if an ownership group generates a ton of profit, they can't spend it on superstars to bolster its roster in the future.
It's always an option, is that you can invest more into the business. And so if you're generating more outside of the team itself, then you have that option to invest in the team.
That could give Giants fans even more hope for a deeper roster with stars.
I think it's a sort of a false way to go down the road to say, well, they put all the money in real estate, they don't care about the team. They do care about the team, but they have to see who they have first, and then you spend the money.
A winning start and a thriving neighborhood around the park could lead to some good times for Giants fans.
Well, coming up, at least 10 international students at Stanford and Berkeley get their visas revoked by the Trump administration. We'll tell you what the schools are saying next. We'll be right back. At least 10 international students in the Bay Area have had their visas revoked by the Trump administration. Stanford announcing 4 of its current students and 2 graduates have been impacted, with another 4 at Berkeley also losing their visas. We reached out to both universities for comment. A campus spokesperson for Berkeley told us they are, quote, committed to doing what they can to support all members of our community as they exercise their rights under the law. And part of the Trump administration's deportation strategy involves the use of the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, legislation that was last invoked during World War II with drastic consequences. As our Ryan Yamamoto explains, local Japanese Americans are now fearing for their neighbors and worried history is repeating itself in the worst way.
To take a step inside this tiny museum in San Jose is like walking into the past, where Tom Izu and Susan Hayase hope people will learn about a painful time for the Japanese American community.
We need to remember this history.
We never want this to happen again to any other people.
On December 7, 1941, Imperial Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, thrusting America into World War II and sparking a rise in anti-Japanese sentiment. 120,000 Japanese living on the West Coast, 70,000 U.S. citizens, were rounded up and sent to one of 10 internment camps in the country.
It didn't matter if you were a citizen at all.
Tom's family was taken to the Poston camp in Arizona. Susan's family to the Amachi camp in Colorado.
It was unfair. It was racist.
To justify the incarceration of the Japanese, the U.S. government used the Alien Enemies Act of 1798.
The act basically says that when it is a declared war or a predatory incursion by a foreign government, then people can be removed.
It is the same act UC Law San Francisco professor Rory Little, who teaches constitutional law, says the Trump administration is now using to arrest and deport Venezuelan immigrants accused of being gang members and drug dealers, as those gangs are, quote, threatening an invasion or predatory incursion against the United States.
The administration today is saying, oh, you know, the invasion of our country by gangs that we say are effectively controlling a foreign government, that ought to be included within the compass of the statute.
Currently, the Federal Court of Appeals has put a temporary block on the Trump administration's interpretation of the Alien Enemies Act. The White House says it plans to appeal the case to the U.S. Supreme Court. Meanwhile, for those in the Japanese American community whose families were taken away without due process 83 years ago, it is like watching history repeat itself.
And this is just a travesty of justice. And when I look at these pictures of the barracks and think about my parents being there, I think of what a nightmare it is to be accused and not to be able to defend yourself.
Well, coming up next, from the boardroom to the locker room, the new craze taking over Silicon Valley's elite. We'll be right back. The days of doing business on the golf course or over a game of squash may soon be over, at least in Silicon Valley. Our Itai Hod explains.
For the last few years, Luis Schilling and his team have poured their blood, sweat, and a whole lot of caffeine into building their company, Tropical IT, a startup that helps businesses manage their computer systems.
It has been a very fun ride, kicking off in my garage, and we're now 12 people supporting 9 countries.
Now he's looking for an investor who can turn his startup into a powerhouse.
For sure.
But today, instead of pitching in a stuffy boardroom, he's heading down a flight of stairs to the locker room. No slides, no spreadsheets. I'm Ted. This deal is being played out on a court.
You get to know them, and they are out of their comfort zone.
Welcome to Paddle, one of the world's fastest growing sports, and Silicon Valley's newest networking hotspot. Ted Maidenberg is a venture capitalist, and the man Schilling is hoping will invest in his company. He says the sport isn't just fun, it hits all the right marks.
This sport takes a ton of concentration, so maybe asking a question to the entrepreneur between points, he or she is not going to have a chance to prepare an answer.
If tennis and squash had a business-savvy baby, it would be paddle. The sport, originating in Mexico in the 1960s, has already taken Europe by storm. Now it's making its way to America. With more than 70,000 courts expected to open worldwide by 2026, paddle is gaining serious momentum. Like pickleball, it's usually played in doubles, but that's pretty much where the similarities end.
The courts are bigger and they are surrounded by glass. So you can let the ball bounce off the glass and then hit it back to the other side of the court.
Pedro Zoraquin is a partner at Bay Paddle, a massive club on Treasure Island that includes a tricked-out co-working space above the courts where you can take calls, play a set, land a deal.
People work from home, right? So now the new concept is work from paddle.
For Schilling, the bet paid off. He scored a second meeting.
So I guess the big question is, do you let them win?
Of course not.
No?
No.
Because in Silicon Valley, it's not just about getting a bounce for your business. It's about how you play the game.
All right, next week, rematch, okay?
I don't know, Darren, do you buy that? You don't let them win? You try your best?
Right.
I don't know. That's a little tricky for me.
Yeah, you've got to be careful, right? You don't want to mix too much business with paddle, but apparently it's been working for them. So.
Well, we better not get you out there because you are the paddle expert.
Right.
Right.
I'm surprised we didn't see E-Type playing in that,
All right.
actually.
That's it for us. Good night.